Hi guys! Today I want to try a new video format and show you the process of creating one page from my sketchbook. I'm going to draw, film the process from above and comment on all my actions. I film my drawing quite often, but usually I do it for my commercial classes. In this case, processes are thoroughly thought out, planned, and every tiny detail serves to the topic of the class. Now I want to share with you my natural process, how I draw when I draw for myself. I chose the simple and understandable topic, and this is why I think this video may be interesting, how to use a routine topic as inspiration for drawing and painting, how to put it in your art book. So the story began that evening when we were cooking a salad. Among the kitchen mess, I caught this picture where the red objects are coolly picked up. My kids used to hang around. There are such a perfect moments in our life when I cook and they draw next to me. My daughter immediately sketched the salad picture. Here is your sketch. I also chose craft paper for my illustration. This is the last page of my art journal dedicated to our family trip to Turkey. And the third thing I want to do is to paint a towel as a background. The photo should appear on the right to make it clear what exactly I'm painting. I love this big flat brush. It's easy to control and cover large areas. I noticed that many people are afraid to paint with large brushes. In my opinion, it's such a pleasure to take a big brush, mix a puddle of paint, or not a puddle, but just put the paint on the palette, as I do now, and with bold, confident movements to create a shape, a spot, a background. Firstly, it's fast, and secondly, it is much easier to make an even tone without visible brush strokes with a large brush rather than a small one. I leave the background to dry, and for now I need a separate piece of paper to make the color spots that I will use to cut out the details for my illustration. This red background is for tomatoes, and this is cadmium red of different saturation. I'm going to cut some tomatoes and the knife handle from this piece. Here I have cold ochre on my palette. It is slightly mixed with some pink shades, I guess. This will be the color spot for the garlic. And the green spot for dill. Here I paint with different shades of green. There is an olive green, then slightly darker and cooler green, and more saturated and intense tone here. I want to cut out one branch of dill from this paper. Let it dry and I'll go back to the art book. I start with tomatoes, just a few round red spots which I will then turn into tomatoes. The painting technique I'm using here isn't exactly watercolorish. I take a saturated, dense tone of paint with a small amount of water. The paint turns out to be dense. It lays down in an almost opaque layer, cover the background color. As a result, I get rich red spots. The tomatoes are ready. More precisely, the basis for the tomatoes. Let's move on to the greenery. I need rich green color. Well, it always takes me a couple of seconds to tune my mind before making a confident, sweeping brushstroke. I'm painting dill stems. They are the basis for the entire bunch of greenery. And I start to create a green mess with such fast, free movements. I have no task to paint every branch. I only need to create a feeling of an abundance of fluffy greenery. I use different shades of green, different color saturation in order to make the green spot picturesque. I'm moving on to the grater. It doesn't fit full size, only a part. I don't want to focus on it, to draw attention to it, so I'm painting it schematically, without going into details. I'm painting with the brush on its side. It gives me a thick line. You know, it's great to have the brush and then can paint both thin and thick lines and small fills. Finding such a brush is a good luck because with only it you can paint the whole sketch or illustration. That's convenient. The base of the grater is ready and now I need to paint the metal surface with holes. This is Meringue Grey. It is opaque, ideal for painting on craft paper. The surface of the grater is metallic, glossy. To show this, I need to pay attention to the play of spots, which is always on a glossy surfaces. I just look at the photo and try to repeat the patches of colors. I'm not going into details because it's not the main object of my illustration. Go ahead, 2 holes. Actually, I don't know how to call them correctly. Sometimes it's really difficult to me to find the correct word for something. Sorry guys for that. I'm painting them also schematically, just creating the feeling that they are there. And I will paint the knife blade in the same color. The base of the sketch is done. Now I take the colored paper that I prepared for the applications. The cutting process is time-consuming, requiring accuracy. It always looks a little bit boring on the video, so I will leave most of it behind the scenes. There is nothing special here, I just will cut out the details of the desired shapes from the previously prepared colored paper. If needed, you can draw the contours with a pencil. I usually don't do this and work right away with scissors. I need to find a suitable arrangement of tomatoes so that they are not in one pile or one line, so that they look natural. That's for garlic. I will cut out 2 cloves from paper and simply paint the third one. And the sprig of dill. It is the most challenging part to cut it out, because it's also need to be made looking natural with lots of thin leaves. Well, I cut out such a branch. It consists of 2 parts, because at some point I didn't like its bend. It was somehow unnatural, so I just cut it into 2 parts. You know what? I forgot to draw strips on the towels. In general, in a good way, they had to be drawn in the initial stage of work, before the tomatoes, and certainly before the dill. To be honest, it happens quite often in my sketching practice, that at some point I realize that I want something in the sketch that I should have drawn earlier. But you know, this is improvisation. This is a place for spontaneous decisions, even if for their implementation it is necessary to do something inconvenient, as it is now. And that's okay. Absolutely. It's important to understand that these strips should be made pale, so that they do not give sharp contrasts, do not argue for attention with the main object. The towel with strips should be perceived as a background. Done. And now I'm going to work on the tomatoes. Make those red circles look more like tomatoes. I'm painting leaves, keeping in mind that their shapes are not ideal, sometimes even bizarre, To paint natural-looking greenery, you need to look carefully at the object and paint what you see, not what you know about it. The more imperfect I paint them, the more natural they will look. They should be perfectly imperfect. Well, it's time to remember about the next layer, the cutout application layer, and glue all the elements. Most often I use a glue stick, but recently I bought this glue for testing. It has a rather large opening, glue quickly flows out. This is not very convenient. I assumed it was smaller. This would be super handy for gluing tiny pieces. But it does not leave marks when dry. This is great. I don't glue all the places. Some will remain unglued, creating additional volume. If you looked at the illustration in real life, you would see not only the color contrast and clear edges of the cutout branch, but also the relief of the illustration. Tomatoes. They are much easier to stick on. I only need to remember what location I found for each of them. Let it be this way. Garlic. I have 2 cloves cut out and I will paint the third one. A couple of tiny details. Look, their color is lighter than the color of leaves I painted on the tomatoes. This is the third clove of garlic. And the most pleasant moment, adding final touches. Somewhere with the pencil, somewhere with paints. For me, this is the most enjoyable stage of work because the illustration is almost done and I'm more or less satisfied with how it turned out, and I just need to add small touches. Since I've added shadows, let's add lights on the tomatoes to make them look more voluminous. That's it. Let me try to show you the volume that cutouts bring to the illustration. This is how entire spread looks like. There is something that should not be forgotten, the date. I encourage you to write it on each sketch. After a while, it's very nice to know when the sketch was created. Well, at the end of the video, I have to ask you to give likes, comments, and what else they usually say there. I really would be pleased to receive some feedback from you and know that you've watched the video to the end. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.